Welcome to episode 382 of the DFO Rundown presented by Bet365. Get in the game and baby, the playoffs, they will keep you rolling at Bet365. I'm Jason Greger alongside Frank Seravalli. Today on the pod, we're going to start with some playoff talk. Obviously, there's a few big stories, but we got a lot of offseason talk. The Islanders, the Kings, the Sabres. Oh my God, the office is coming back in Buffalo. We'll get to that. Also, the coaching carousel. Utah finally has a name, so lots and lots to discuss on the pod today. Frankie, how you doing?
Not as good as Mikko Rantanen.
Cool, buddy. That guy is he's pretty hot right now. He's NHL record 12 consecutive goals that he has factored in on for Dallas. The previous record was 9 that he had tied with Mario Lemieux, and then he blew it out the door. And the crazy part is 11 of his 12 points have come in 3 periods. He just decides, okay, you know what? I'm just going to take over a period. 4 points. And then he has 3 points, back-to-back hat tricks for Mikko Rantanen. And man, the pain that Avs fans are feeling just gets worse and worse by the period.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Sakic and Chris McFarland can sit there all they want and say, we don't think we could have built a successful team by paying 3 top-end players the way that Mikko Rantanen was looking to be paid. I don't know if you can have a successful team by discarding a player like that, honestly.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Because you're going to pay him 12, right? Let's even say 12 and a half. If you're going to pay Marty Necas 9 and then you're whatever other player you get for 3.5, are they going to make your team that much better?
Well, here's my bold prediction. I don't think Marty Necas would sign for 9.
You think he's going to ask for more?
He was north of a point per game. When he's a free agent, the cap is $104 million.
Wow.
I'm just saying, what would be the incentive to jump this summer? Have another point north of a point per game year, and you are getting 10.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I just think they've found themselves in an incredibly difficult spot. But that said, if you want a funny story, and it shows you how quickly things can change and how narratives can be rewritten. I have a friend, I would call him NHL adjacent, very plugged in and connected to people in the game. And he texts me during the middle of the Stars series against the Avs last round, and he goes, "Is Rantanen playing like a $5 million player?" And he texts me after the hat trick last night. He goes, "All right, it's back up to 12." And I said, "No, buddy, that's 14 or 15." Honestly, like that's what we're talking about in the playoffs. And for a guy that is well north of a point per game in his career in the playoffs, closing in on 100 games. That is a special performer.
Hey, for players who have played 50 playoff games, currently the NHL has 4 of the top 6 all time in points per game. Gretzky's first at 1.84. Mario Lemieux is second at 1.61. Then McDavid at 1.6. Draisaitl's at 1.48. McKinnon's at 1.32. And Rantanen's at 1.30 points per game. Like, we're talking one of the greatest playoff performers ever. And, oh, by the way, for Marty Necas, Frank, Marty Necas, you might want to pay him $10 million. But Marty Necas, I don't care what he does in the regular season. He might have to show up in the playoffs. He's got 35 points in 66 playoff games. Ooh. He's basically a half a point a game guy in the playoffs compared to Rantanen. So I don't care if you paid him $9 million or $10 million. It ain't like, it's not even close. So I would look at, even if he has another point per game season, great. I'm still not paying him $10 million because he's never shown me anything in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think that's the part of the calculus here. Look, there's lots of other things still to be decided. Will Brock Nelson resign? Like, the Avs got a lot of things to pick through, but is this team better now or better before? And the other funny part is, to rewind it and not to relitigate it from a Carolina perspective, but would you take Necas and Drury or Stankoven and Hall?
I'd probably take Stankoven and Hall.
Okay, so we agree then that the Canes are better now than they were before the Rantanen trade.
I would think so, yeah. I like Stankoven, and Taylor Hall. At what does he sign for? $3 million and change. Like, Yeah, no problem for me. I like that deal. I like them better.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, everyone would think that the Canes are better with Rantanen, and the Canes would think that they're better with Rantanen, but they took a swing. They didn't keep him, but they're a better team now than they were before the deal, and they have other picks on top of it. Does that not come out and be a net win?
Oh, yeah. No,
because they weren't going to ever give Necas 9, and they certainly were never going to give him 10. So all they did was move away from that a year and a half early before he ended up walking for nothing. And you get Stankoven, who's way younger and might even be better than Necas right now or close to it. That's probably a stretch, but I think has a lot. I think he has a ton of upside.
Yeah, no, better in the playoffs. Now speaking of the playoffs, the Toronto Maple Leafs 2-0 on the Florida Panthers, and William Nylander has been he's been the Leafs' best player. Showed up again last night in that game, and you know what? Give the Leafs a lot of credit, Frank. They took care of business on home ice, and even without their starting goaltender, they have a goalie kind of tandem, and their tandem is 2-0, and each guy's got to win in the first few games. I'll go yeah, Stolarz, I have to look. Did he get credit for the weird NHL rules for the win? I don't even know, but might not have.
Very impressive by the Leafs, and certainly serving me up a healthy plate of crow. And I'm happy to eat it. I think it's very surprising. We just have never seen it with this core. They have put a team on their heels. They have put the defending champs, 2-time Stanley Cup finalist, starting to question themselves a little bit. Now, yeah, Florida had a couple leads in game 2. The Leafs were the way better team to start the game and in game 1, and were a bit shaky, obviously, down the stretch after the goalie change. But I think this team in Toronto looks different. Now, how does Florida respond will be the big question, because
I'm not going to count out the defending champs just yet. Obviously it'll be tough. Like you look at, even last year when Dallas came back on Vegas down 2-0. Now they lost even both those games at home, I think. So,
yes.
Florida is definitely not a team to count out, but Toronto does look like a different team. They look more poised. They look more controlled. You know what? If they give up a goal, that they don't sag. Like Florida didn't have any real extended stretch where they controlled either one of those games.
Well, I think just also some highly uncharacteristic things from Florida. Sergei Bobrovsky has been below average, would we call him, through the first 2 games? Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And when have you ever seen the Florida Panthers score a goal and then give one up in short succession and do it a couple times?
Yeah.
That's credit to Toronto, though, for, being in a spot where they bounce back quickly. But at the same time, I think there's a lot for Florida to clean up, and they're down 2-0, but with the way game 1 ended, with the Maple Leafs surviving by the skin of their teeth, these games are not incredibly far off. Like Florida has definitely some building blocks here.
Well, and hey, you look at Toronto, Nylander's played great. What about Max Pacioretty through 2 games, man? He's been exceptional for them. Physical, got 4 points in 2 games. He's been awesome. And Toronto's up 2-0, and Matthews has 1 point. Like you're going to need that every now, where you're going to need your guys. Edmonton won game 5 and 6 against LA when Draisaitl and McDavid didn't have a 5-on-5 point. So you're going to need games where those guys and other guys show up. And right now, Nylander and Pacioretty are the guys leading the way.
So I actually had this debate with a GM this morning, and he said, "Hey, have you seen how well Matthews has played in these first 2 games?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean, I'm watching." And he goes, "I think for my money, he's been better and more complete than Alexander Barkov has been through the first 2 games." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "Well, that's what you need to win?" I said, "Sure, but Austin Matthews is being paid to score." So I guess the big debate, the question I would ask you is, are you okay with Austin Matthews scoring less, who obviously is still dealing with something and is laboring? Are you okay with him scoring less, being less of a threat, if it means that you get incredibly conscientious play from him?
It's a good question. I think I would say he's going to eventually have to score. You're right. Like, you can say, okay, he's better than Barkov, but Barkov also scores usually, right? So if Matthews the next game continues to play well defensively and gets a goal and assist, well, then that's what you need. It can't just be that Austin Matthews is going to be a really good defensive player and, ends the series with 3 assists. Like, I'm sure if they win, they don't care, but long term, I think you will need a little bit more offense from him. But his two-way game, and Matthews is probably been better of a two-way player than maybe he gets credit for at times. So I'm not surprised by it in that sense. But I can't just say, hey, as long as Austin Matthews is good defensively, I'm happy. Like, no, he's got to do both.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's being paid to do both and should be more of an offensive threat. That said, my hot take for the Leafs is that Joe Woll doesn't come out of the net for the remainder of the playoffs.
And did Matthews play that great? He was outshot 7-5. And if you look at just Corsi, it was 28 shot attempts against to 10-4. Like, I don't know if the numbers suggestly match that he was a defensive dominant player.
Okay. Very complete start to the playoffs for him. But
hey, Toronto's played really well, man. I give him credit, and Woll did get credit for both wins, even though Toronto never trailed in that game. It's kind of a weird NHL rule, but either way, I thought he came in. That Barkov goal. Funny enough, you're thinking, because that one kind of went right through him, but he bounced back right after that.
Yeah, my take is Joe Woll's not coming out again.
Well, not for a week. Stolar's out for at least a week, right? He's in concussion protocol. They're not going to say it, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to add 1+1. The guy took a puck to the head, then he got hit by Bennett. It got blown out of proportion massively in Toronto, and then he was throwing up on the sidelines, in the bench. He's clearly got some sort of concussion stuff, but yeah, he's not like there's no goalie controversy in Toronto because there's really only one goalie available right now.
But that's not what I'm saying. My point is, when Stolarz is healthy again, Joe Woll will not falter at any point, and they will not yank him back out just to go back to Stolarz.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Why
would you?
Well, I guess if he's playing well, sure. But
that's what I'm saying. He's not going to give up the net again. He's not going to give up the rock. That's what I'm telling you.
All right. Stolarz kind of took it away from him down the stretch. So I don't know. Stolarz played really well before the injury. So, be fun, but that's obviously might not happen until the third round, right? If Toronto gets there, I'm not sure Stolarz is coming back before then.
And it's funny that Matt Murray is the backup because, again, let's not get ahead of ourselves. 6 wins into the 16-win journey for the Leafs, but Matt Murray's like kind of the poster child for runs where the goalies end up splitting the workload by happenstance, by poor play, by injury. Him and Marc-Andre Fleury in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Did Hellebuyck give you reason to believe that he's coming around after? I know they lost 3-2, but man, they were getting shelled early on in that game, and he looked a lot more aggressive than he had been in some of the other games.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I saw from him in the third period and both OTs in Game 7. He was more proactive, less reactive, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a step in the right direction, but let me take you to Cal Pickard. Like, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters are wins. And that's the first time that the Jets have lost on home ice in the playoffs. You spot a team won on the road, particularly as deep and as good as Dallas is. I mean, I think the Jets are already in a little bit of trouble.
Well, they're going to need Morrissey back for sure. I thought they played pretty well. It was a close game, but the fact that Robertson came back, Scheifele came back in, guys are getting healthy, but yeah, you're going to have to win games, no question. And Winnipeg, considering how they played on the road in the first round, yeah, it doesn't bode well that they lost home ice advantage. Now that's a different series. And I just can't see Hellebuyck being as bad on the road as he was in the 3 games against St. Louis. Like, it'd be almost impossible to match that level of subpar play. So we'll see how the Jets are, but Dallas is a really good team. And you know what? I thought it was going to be a tight series, and really, it was like one period, right? Dallas dominated the second, and that was really the hockey game.
Well, they kind of dominated the first too. The shots at one point were 10-2.
Yeah. Oh, but that fair point. But I thought like the second period, it's funny like how Dallas has just been a feast or famine in their last few games here. We don't do much 4 goals in a period. Don't do much 4 goals in a period. 3 goals in a period, and they kind of win games just because what you said earlier about, hey, it's just, it's about goaltenders winning, and it's about when you score your goals. And lately, Dallas is a team that when they get one, they seem to get multiple ones in a short period of time.
What'd you make of Scott Arniel's comments post game? He said that his team felt like they had the urgency of game 45 in the middle of the season.
Yeah, I think sometimes you've heard from teams before, you have that emotional game 7, especially the way the Jets came back, 2 goals.
So did the Stars.
Yeah, I agree. But the Stars wasn't even it wasn't overtime. It wasn't 3 seconds left. Like the Stars had a great comeback, but as good as their comeback was, it wasn't, I don't think, as emotionally charged as Winnipeg's. And so it's not an excuse, but I think, the emotion sometimes plays a big factor. And maybe it's the fact that you're right. Dallas got off to the good start, Frank, and Winnipeg was, they were trying to always swim upstream in that game.
I think the game 7s are a complete wash in terms of emotion. Dallas had a little bit more to do on their plate. They had to travel there. Yeah, they got one additional day, but I think there's something that Arniel is keying in on, because the one thing that I really didn't like from Winnipeg in the games that they played on the road was their posture and their body language. I'm a big believer in that. And I think it shows you, are you on your toes or are you on your heels? And they seemed very disinterested at times playing St. Louis on the road. What we saw was a carryover of that now to home ice, which is pretty alarming to start the next round. I think he's a spot on assessor of what he basically verbalized what I'm saying or was seeing with my eyes.
Yeah, and that's a fair point, and that's probably part of it. I do think that honestly, Dallas traveling and going on the road, you kind of get out of that bubble, whereas the Winnipeg guys, they're still in Winnipeg. They had this everywhere they go in the city, everyone's like, oh my God, game 7. Like they don't get away from it. And you probably are still living it a little bit longer being at home. And I think Dallas, sometimes you get on the road and hey, what? Now you're in the hotel and okay, let's get focused. We're not here. We're not, listening to we're not having our fans around us all the time, reliving game 7. So I wonder if that's a small part of it, but you're bang on about how lacking in urgency they looked on the road in St. Louis, and how that, in a way, I think it's fair to say that was similar to the game 1 loss at home.
Washington, Carolina, any surprises through one game?
Well, I was a little bit surprised at just how little pushback we saw from Washington in game 1. Like Carolina was really the better team from start to finish in that game.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily surprised by that. I'm surprised that the Caps weren't able to create more. And I'm surprised that they didn't use some of the leverage that they have and advantage that they have in size. I think Carolina's bottom 6 can compete with anyone. I think Washington's top 6 probably has a bit of an advantage. I'd say the defense is a little bit of a wash, and the Caps should have a theoretical pretty large box checked for them in the goaltending department. So I don't know if I'm necessarily surprised by the result, but maybe more surprised in how we got to the result.
Well, to me, yeah, like if I thought this would be a 7-game series. I thought it'd be close, but like Carolina in every metric was heavily, leading in that game, from shot attempts to shot on goals, puck possession, offensive zone time. They had all of it by a significant margin. And I think Washington, if they're going to win, they have to. Now, I saw a few hits, but they didn't have much extended offensive zone time. And when you're bigger, that's when you can wear down a smaller team, and they didn't do it. So I think, credit to Carolina, they didn't allow it to happen. And the one thing about the Canes is they play fast and they play pretty much the same style all the time. right? You know what they're going to do. And so now it's going to be, I think, up to Washington. Washington's got to play more of their game. I thought Carolina after that, but hey, guys, we played our game. Check, check, check. And I'm not sure there as many check marks for Washington.
I think that's what happens when you run into a really, really detailed team.
Yeah. So what about Vegas and Edmonton? Like Vegas doesn't lose at home very often. Well, they 19 consecutive home playoff games. They'd never blown a third period lead until game one. And the Oilers set an NHL record for 5 consecutive come from behind victories in the playoffs.
Very impressed at the way the Oilers controlled the game. I mean, they were trailing early, but did they win the last 50 minutes?
50 minutes. Yeah. The last 50, like Vegas had 3 shots 5-on-5 in the last 40 minutes of the game.
Yeah. I think what has been eye-opening is the Oilers' depth has been very impressive. I mean, Connor Brown is playing really well. You see the patience and poise that he has. Vander Kane making his mark. Trent Frederick. Like these guys are, they, especially with Dorofeyev out, like I think that's a really big loss for Vegas and Pietrangelo, obviously. But that is, I think it's a game changer. It tips the scales in terms of how, with Edmonton getting healthier, with their guys, you know, slowly getting more acclimated and creating a little bit more chemistry, I think it really is starting to pay off.
Well, anybody who is a Dallas Stars fan, and I saw the bubble. It was in Edmonton. I watched all the games, Frank. John Klingberg in the bubble was unreal. He was the most exciting player to watch on a game-by-game basis. And then, of course, he had all the injuries. And you kind of, when he played in Edmonton in the regular season this year, I was like, geez, I don't know if, is he going to play regular in the playoffs? He's been amazing for Edmonton here the last few games. Like his lateral movement with his hips is exciting. His poise with the puck, and Edmonton just didn't allow Vegas, who likes to forecheck. Like Edmonton, I thought they had a really good game plan on stretch passes, and they caught Vegas numerous times. Like I didn't love Vegas's line changes in that game, Frank. I don't know if you watched that, but they got caught multiple times on what I call lazy line changes. And, it's one game, and I fully expect Vegas to play way better. But you're bang on. Dorofeyev was their leading goal scorer, 35 goals. He was second on their team, and they had one of the best power plays in the league. He's second on the team in power play goals. Maybe he's not a big name around the league, but that's a really big loss. And then you mentioned Pietrangelo, and we don't know yet if he's going to play. If he's sick, like we'll see if he's going to play if he's sick. But either way, you take him out of the lineup, and he's just big, rangy, gets in the way. Obviously, he's a very good defenseman. That's 2 key guys out of your lineup. And anytime you get a break like that, you have to take advantage of it. And well, it took till later in the game, but Edmonton did take advantage with the big Hyman goal.
Yeah, now they can get greedy and say, can we steal both in Vegas and potentially make this a short series? They've got a real opportunity to do so. And I want to just hit on 2 things quickly with Klingberg, because I had Stan Bowman on my podcast a few weeks ago before the trade deadline. And he said this was, I'm trying to think. Trade deadline was March 7th. This would have been like mid-February, just coming out of the Four Nations face-off. And he said it's going to take 7 to 8 weeks to really understand what John Klingberg's capabilities are. And I remember that clip went out and people were like, come on, like seriously, like if you don't know what John Klingberg is after 2 weeks playing, you don't know what you're looking at. And I think it's a reminder, and maybe for Gabe Landeskog and whoever else, when you miss a significant chunk of time, Evander Kane too, when you miss a year, when you miss 6 months, whatever it is, you don't just snap your fingers and just go back to being an elite player. You have to relearn the game, the pace, everything that comes with it, the touches, the pressure. And so I'm going to just say full marks to John Klingberg, like take that. And he's looked very impressive at times. The caveat to that is my concern with John Klingberg is I want to see him handle a legitimate forecheck. He didn't get that in round 1 because the Kings don't play that way, and you just fed right into his hand. The Golden Knights were on their heels. They looked for stretches of that game 1 like they were just dying to get rid of the puck and get a change because they were hemmed in their own end so often and didn't have a chance to really establish any consistent pressure and zone time. I think there's an opening for the Golden Knights if they hammer John Klingberg that I don't know if he can process and handle what they're throwing at him. But let's see if he can take a step.
Well, I'll say this though, when they got the puck in deep, they just moved the puck so quickly, and they couldn't forecheck. But I agree, I would expect them to forecheck more. But the other thing about Klingberg is his play at the offensive blue line. To me, is probably the most impressive. There's 4 different situations where he's got, and I'm like, is this guy going to dump the puck in? He's like, no, I'll just dance around the guy. Like, there's not many guys in the league who have that poise and confidence. Because if you turn the puck over, Frank, it's a breakaway going the other way. And right now, his straightaway speed is not his forte. So, he played well. I expect Vegas to be a lot hungrier in that game. But hey, the Edmonton Oilers, the comeback kids, if you want to call it that right now, 5 in a row. It's never happened before in the NHL playoffs. And, McDavid even joked, they don't really know how to approach game 2. They rarely win game 1, right? It's only the 4th time in 14 series that they've actually won game 1. So they seemingly make it harder on themselves than they should. And a game 2 win would definitely, put them in the driver's seat coming home. So we'll see if they can do it. But after their dominant game 5, then they kind of had a sloppy defensive game 6 against LA, and they just outscored them. They can't have that again at Vegas. I think they gotta continue on and have like the game 4, third period in overtime, game 5, and game 1 Vegas. That's a pretty good sample size of 4 games now where they played pretty solid defensively. They just can't fall back into their trap of getting a little loose, like seemingly still seems to happen for this club.
Is there a chance that Cal Pickard also doesn't come out again?
I'll say this. Cal Pickard wasn't tested very much. Like, what did he face? 17 or 18 shots. Like, it's not a taxing game. So he can play more consecutive games, I think, when he's not getting taxed like that. But, hey, Edmonton's got good team defense. And I've said it all along. Their team's not built to have a goalie have to steal them games. They're not paid that way. They're not built that way. And if they just get solid goaltending, they'll be okay. I still think you're going to see Skinner at some point, Frank, in the playoffs. I just don't know when it is.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Well, if they keep winning, like, hey, if they win tonight, they're obviously not going to say, hey, let's change our goalie. Like,
well, I just think there's something to what Chris Knobloch said before putting Cal Pickard in. He said, look at his win-loss record.
Oh yeah. He just finds ways to win.
And that's really all that matters. Like, there's no pictures on the Stanley Cup.
Yeah. But it's also, we should point out that he did play most of the bottom 10 teams. That's what he was beating, right? But now he's beating playoff teams. So
who cares? He's 5-0 in the playoffs. He's undefeated. I don't think you move off of him even if he loses game 2.
Hey, Frank, I'm the one who've argued for years when save percentage means jack shit in the playoffs. All that matters is if you win. That's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, that's just not true. Like Connor Hellebuyck having 3 games in last round where he's under an 800 save percentage. Like, you're going to tell me that means jack shit?
No, but would you know what Calvin Pickard's save percentage is in the playoffs? It's under 900.
Yeah, but that's different than under 800.
Yeah, wow. For some games, but people get so focused on you have to have 900 to win. No, you don't. Especially if you don't give up a lot of shots. To me, goals against
the playoffs can be really skewed. Yeah. I think save percentage really, really matters over the course of the season, though.
I'll take goals against average over save percentage all day. Because save percentage doesn't
in the playoffs, I'll say, but not in the regular season.
Even then, because to me, if you face 20 shots and you give up 2 goals, and you face 25 shots and give up 2 goals, your save percentage higher, but you still only gave up 2 goals. Doesn't really matter. Goals are ultimately what wins a game. Goals for, goals against. So just keep your goals against down, and I think that's what matters more than anything else. Now we're going to get to a lot of the offseason, the coaching carousel, the GM searches. We'll have a little office reference, but first we'll bring in Ty Yaremchuk. Ty, how you doing?
I'm doing good, boys. Ready to go with a new edition of Buy or Sell, brought to you by our friends at Bet365, an official partner of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Want to get in on the action at Bet365? They got you. From game props, player props, totals, and money line, you can even bet on futures like series winners, conference champions, and the Stanley Cup champion. Whatever you bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app get in on the game must be 19 or older. Let's start with a futures prop from Bet365. Buy or sell. Do you think any of these second round series end in 5 games or sooner? Because there is one that Bet365 says is favorited to do so. Frank, buy or sell? Do any of these series end in 5 games or sooner? 5 games or sooner?
Oh, so my guess would be that they would be favoring the Oilers.
Okay, and are you buying or selling on it? Two-parter.
I'm selling. But I do think that the Stars could win in 5.
Okay. Greg's, you buying or selling on any of these series ending in 5 games or sooner?
Oh, yeah, I'm buying all day. I picked Dallas in 5 to start. So I'll stick with that one. And now, it's early on. Edmonton, Toronto's obviously off to a great start. But yeah, I think there's a good chance one of them is 5 for sure.
So obviously the Edmonton Vegas series was the biggest favorite to go 7 games to begin. It's now actually plus 140 to end in 5 games or sooner. Dallas, Winnipeg is plus 110 to end in 5 games or sooner, but actually it's Carolina, Washington minus 105 to end in 5 games or sooner. I don't see it. I think the Capitals will find a way to win a couple games there.
Yeah, that's not a great line.
Yeah. Speaking of not a great line, how about from DFO Live the other day? I hammered Mikko Rantanen over 2.5 goals in the entire series. His line was 2.5 for the whole series. Cashed it in game 1. Unbelievable feeling. Let's go away from the playoffs for a second. Are you buying or selling on the look and the name Utah Mammoth, Greg's?
Well, you know what? I did lacrosse play-by-play in the NLL for years in the Colorado Mammoth. So, you know what? I think it's a good name. The logos, the Mammoth logo for NLL fans or NHL fans, I think both are good. They're quite different and how they've approached it from a different angle. So, yeah, I don't mind the name at all. I actually like Mammoth better than Yeti, if I'm being honest.
Speaking of Yeti, I love how absolutely petty they were in their video announcing it, that they had the girl standing in there with a Stanley. I mean, the rival to Yeti, it's just so epic. They didn't miss one detail. I thought their rollout was really good, and I like the logo. I really like the color scheme. So I'm brought in by the color scheme, the little Easter eggs in the logo, the fact that the tusks are shaped in a U, the state outline in the logo as well. I think there's lots of cool facets to it, and I think there's probably a strong evolution to whatever happens next with, jerseys evolving over the years, adding a third jersey color. There's lots to do and things to add to it. So yeah, I think it kind of really encompasses a lot of the region and frankly, some of the history too.
Well, it's interesting that Utah has their tusks in the U and the Colorado Mammoth tusks are in an M.
Oh, interesting.
Well, just so you know, because people did ask, the Utah Mammoth, the Utah Hockey Club, were in very close contact with Kroenke Sports and Entertainment, which is the parent company of the Avs. They got their blessing to go use Mammoth in the NHL.
Interesting. Let me throw you guys one on the Colorado Avalanche. You touched on them a little bit earlier. One of the more disappointing parts of their playoff run was Brock Nelson really not showing up after they gave up a ton to get him at the deadline. I guess kind of 2 ways to view it. Is it just simply not a fit and they let him walk? Or is it like, oh shit, we paid so much to get this guy, let's not let him walk for nothing in free agency? Buy or sell on Brock Nelson being back with the Avs, Frank?
Sell. I think the only thing worse than giving up a lot is throwing good money after bad. And that's not a knock on Brock Nelson, or not to say that he couldn't be a good player over a, long stretch next season and beyond and get comfortable. This is a career New York Islander. Like, it's not easy to go to a new place and try and figure it out, playing in a different conference with a different coach. There's a lot of unfamiliarities. That said, the biggest reason why I'm not paying Brock Nelson is because he's 34. I'm not doing it.
Well, I guess my question is, what's he looking for term and AAV? Because I'm a big believer in, hey, if you give up something big, but you sign a guy for multi-years, then to me, okay, it's much more worth it. You give up that much just for one playoff run. that's a much harder pill to swallow. And I think Brock Nelson, like he came in and in the regular season, he scored the exact same goal pace he was scoring in New York this year, right? But in the playoffs, it's a short window, and you know what? If you're not productive, then obviously it doesn't look great. He had no goals. Did have 4 assists, but he had no goals in the 7 games, which isn't ideal. I'd still consider it, although there is the Landeskog factor now, right? And he came back, and if he's good, but if you had 3 of them down the middle, you can move a guy to the wing here or there. I'd still consider it because there's not a lot of free agents on the market that I think are better than Brock Nelson. Okay. It's just going to come down to the price.
Okay, so the price according to AFP Analytics is 3 times 7. Are you doing it?
Now, is he 34 to start this year or 35?
He's already 34.
Okay. Well, he turns 34 in October. So 34, 35, 36. I don't, you know what? For a good player like that, guys don't age that terribly. He's a pretty good skater. I think you probably could get him a little bit less than that, give or take. So, 6.5 or something. I'd do it for 6.5. And I guess if it's 7, I'd probably still do it for 7.
So go back to
3 years. I like the term. The term, Frank, is to me what's 3 years. I can live with 3 years. It's the term. If you were going longer, then I'm like, I'm hedging more.
I think if anything, it has a chance to be on the high end of this because you just said the magic words, which are there are not many players that are available that are better. Yeah. And that means someone might stretch into 8. That means someone might stretch into 4 years.
Well, I guess it comes down to, and you mentioned he was a New York Islander and he did go to the conference final twice, but really for the most of his career, like he's outside of those 2 years, did he ever win another playoff round? Maybe once in like 15, maybe I'd have to go back and look, but, or 16, I guess, because 15 was the Barzell year. You can go get more money, but if you don't really have a chance to win, like I know a lot of people thought it was Minnesota, and it might still be Minnesota, and that, they're competitive too. So it'll probably come down to that, and maybe he wants to live closer to home. So, but I don't know if I'm Brock Nelson, I'm chasing the money. I'm still getting 21 mil, or let's just use your example, like $21 million bucks. Like when you've already made as much as he's made, like I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, the other centers just on the free agent market quickly. Matt Duchene, John Tavares, Mikael Granlund, Ryan Donato, and then Brock Nelson would be 5th in points produced this year. Obviously, Sam Bennett is a real popular name as well. That's going to be a UFA this summer.
And look, last thing, I'll say this. Don't underestimate, and I'm not saying he'll chase every last dollar, but his career earnings are 45. If you're talking about the last 3 years getting 21 or potentially 28 or 32, it's a huge, huge jump in career earnings. I'd expect that to matter a lot.
All right. Last one I got for you guys. I know you're going to dig into it maybe more in depth after my segment here, but I'll say both the Kings and Islanders hire a veteran/experienced GM. You buying or selling, Frank? Both.
Buy.
Ooh.
Well, let me dig into the caveat of your question, which is, are you saying that this is the GM or the point person, the overall person in charge of hockey ops?
No, I see. So like, yeah, if it was like a Ken Holland as your Poho and someone like a
Ryan Martin.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess that is an interesting caveat I didn't really think about. So yeah, I guess the question would be, they hire someone with experience to either be the president or the GM, the point man, as you said. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You're buying, Greg's?
Well, isn't Luke Robitaille kind of the guy already in LA who kind of oversees a lot of it? But my LA, I can see an obvious just promoting from within, right? In Bergevin, I could see that.
So why isn't it done already? It's Thursday.
Yeah.
He's worked there for 3 years. He was the GM of the Montreal Canadiens for 10. You shake hands with Rob Blake on Monday, and Thursday you're announcing it. Wednesday.
Here's my thing. To me, even if I'm going to hire Bergevin, I still would go through the interview process because there's always something you can learn about your organization from people on the outside. And I think we talked about it, Frank, last time. The Sabres erred in their coaching. Even if you wanted to hire Lindy Ruff, no problem, but you didn't interview anybody else. Yep. And I think when you have an opportunity to do that, you can learn, even if it's only a small little caveat. Oh, geez, we haven't thought of that, right? Because Bergevin's on the inside. He's being part of the organization. And all of us get a little bit of a bias to see what we want to see. So to me, if I'm Luc Robitaille, even if I have Bergeron at the top of my list, I'm still going to interview some other guys because they might give me some good information that can help us moving forward.
All right, boys, there you go. That is a wrap on this week's edition of Buy or Sell, brought to you by Bet365.
So let's start there with the Kings, Frank. Do you see any other names that make sense if it isn't Bergeron?
I do. I think the LA Kings have been in touch with Ken Holland. I think you can add him to the list. Look, that's a number of, I think, different opportunities for Ken Holland. Does he be president? Potentially with the Islanders, and the thought process is that if that were to happen, that he would be interested in reuniting with Ryan Martin, who's the assistant GM with the Rangers, who worked under him in Detroit, and is a bona fide candidate in his own right. I would suggest, without Ken Holland attached to him, that Ryan Martin makes a ton of sense. But then could Ken Holland just go back to being the GM again?
Which job, because supposedly Holland's been interviewed by the Islanders too. Which job today, Islanders GM, Kings GM, do you think is more attractive?
For me or for Ken Holland?
For you. Like for anybody, any GM out there.
I would say the Islanders from a roster perspective, but the Kings from I think they're really close from a roster perspective. I really do. Like, I think Byfield is an exceptional piece, and I actually happen to really like their young defenseman. I have real concerns about transitioning away from Kopitar and Doughty, because I think those are big question marks. Seems like they stabilize things in Kemper, but I think LA is just such an easy, not that New York is not, but it's just an easy place to recruit to. People want to go play in LA. Not that New York is, it just, I think LA might be closer.
Yeah, I would say the Islanders, because I think if my goal is to win, I think there's two dominant teams in the Pacific outside of LA. And I'm not sold. They're like, Carolina's good. They're not dominant. Washington, always getting older. They'll be good. I think your chances of moving up with Sorokin and you signed Dobson. I know you love Cal, Richie that they just got in that trade.
Yep.
And, some other pieces that I think, hey, maybe we got a better chance. Like in LA.
Be careful. I mean, the Islanders aren't even, they're the third of three in their own region. Yeah. Like their own little metropolitan area. They're the third of three.
But do you view the Rangers and the Devils like that good? Are any teams that you view in the Metro as good as Edmonton or Vegas?
No.
Yeah. So that, I wonder if that,
but you lose every battle with the Rangers. You lose recruiting, you lose spending, you lose everything. Like, you're the little brother. I mean, you just are. It's a fact of life.
Yeah.
And the Devils, you could argue, have way more impactful pieces at both the forward and defense positions, and definitely have more depth.
Yeah, well, I would agree with you there. But
so which one are
like small depth though?
Yeah, but that's okay. You can solve for that problem. It's harder to get difference makers.
Yeah, it's good. I'm just curious because they're both.
Yeah, I think it's a great question.
Yeah, because they're both kind of similar too, right? Like the Islanders have been defensive, and the Kings have been defensive, and so can either organization kind of change what their identity's been? Because it's been an identity that just frankly hasn't been successful now for a decade.
Mm-hmm. I just think you're also then contending with other teams. I think there's more. No, I think that's not fair to say. I'll take that back. Yeah. Because the Central is just as hard. I was going to say the Atlantic's got some tough pieces, but like the Central is just as hard.
Yeah. No, they are. So so the Islanders. So if Ken Holland's in LA, Martin though maybe for the Islanders. How do you see?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how that's going to shake out, because Bergevin I think was a candidate with the Islanders as well.
Would Rob Blake be a candidate for the Islanders?
I don't think so.
No,
not because they wouldn't think about it, but because I I don't think he'd be leaving Southern California.
Okay, so he's just taking a little R&R.
I mean, when you're a former player that has made that much money and then money has not even been a thought.
Yeah.
Why would you want to completely shake up your life and move across continent? I just don't see it.
Do you think the GMs are going to retain their coaches in LA and Long Island?
No. I don't care who it is. I don't think either one gets
Hiller and Roy. So that'll add to so that segues nice into the coaching carousel, right? We know that one seat's being filled by the Rangers, but maybe 2 more vacancies are coming. Where it's now May 8th. And I was looking at hiring times. You know, there's been a lot of coaches historically when there's vacancies hired between May 8th and May 25th. So are we going to see a run here on coaches in the next 2 weeks?
I think that's very likely. But I think there's a process and an order to it. I think Rick Tocchet has the coaching world eating out of the palm of his hand. And I think he's going to have multiple mega offers that are game changers for the coaching pay scale, that I think there's teams that are going to sit and wait until they get an answer from Tocchet. And that you would think that would come relatively soon, except he's going to do TNT this weekend. So not that soon. And what else is still happening? Like Kyle Dubas is in Sweden for the Worlds. He's got a coaching vacancy to fill.
Yeah.
So when it comes to Rick Tocchet, I think he's interviewed and been offered in Seattle. I think he's interviewed in Anaheim. I think he's interviewed with the Flyers, if you even need one. I think the Pittsburgh Penguins are interested. I think the Boston Bruins are interested. And, you know, again, there's nuance to some of these things. Has the conversation happened yet? Has the offer happened yet? Will it happen?
What about Chicago?
I have not heard him connected to Chicago.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fascinated to see where he lands, and then kind of, you know, some of the other ones. So, you know,
so I'm going to project this is just my own projection. I'm going to project that Rick Tocchet is on at least a 5-year deal and north of $6 million per year.
Ooh, good for him. Now that
there was no one that's hit $6 million before Mike Sullivan.
Right. Well, money's going up everywhere. So, you know what? Why not? You're a free agent. You're one of the most sought after free agent coaches.
And by the way, obviously Mike Babcock did years ago with the Leafs, but I'm saying in the current landscape, no one has been that high. What would you think about Joel Quenneville in Anaheim? There were some reports that he had interviewed there twice, and obviously goes way back with Pat Verbeek. But what do you think about him jumping back in potentially, and what about a fit with the Ducks?
Well, it makes sense on a lot of fronts, Frank. You talked about, hey, you know what, maybe a non-major market that you know, and Anaheim's a big market in the sense of where they are, but they're not necessarily a massive hockey market per se. And I think Pat Verbeek's, you're not going to worry about, like Joel Quenneville. You know what? He's talked about it. Anybody can read the report. You know, I think we know what happened there at the end with him, and you know, he could have done it better, but he, at the end of the day, didn't maybe do it as bad as some people think. And he's got a history of being a good coach, so it wouldn't surprise me at all. And because I think the Ducks, where they're at in their development, Frank, is they're ready to now move to the next level. And I think having a coach who has experience but worked with some young guys and talented players on defense and everything, I think he'd probably be a pretty good fit.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was going to take a market kind of like Anaheim, where it's not white hot for him to jump back into. I think it would take a GM that has conviction like Verbeek does. And I think they're about to try and take the hardest step that you can possibly take. I think Joel Quenneville paid his time. I think you see Stan Bowman back and working in the NHL, you know, for a season now. I think so much of what was publicly reported and what was in the report, the details, like that was some of the first time those guys ever even heard the details. They believe, or I believe they were told, quote, something weird happened between Brad Aldrich and a player. When you don't know what something weird is, like, you're not really bound to hound that and figure out what it is, especially when the CEO of the team says, I'll take care of it. It's on me. So look, he's certainly not without sin. It was an error, quite clearly an omission, but I think what happens is you end up in a spot where you want to throw these people and lock them in a cell and throw away the key. And that's just not how life works. Reminder, these are not the guys that did the abusing.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that they didn't do anything wrong. No. I'm just saying, like, you don't, that's not how it works. You don't just get the ability to earn a living taken away forever.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. The Buffalo Sabres, Frank, with a little ode to the office, Eric Eric Stahl, assistant to the general manager. What do you make of the off season for the Sabres and the direction they're going? Like, I thought they needed more experience in the front office. Not saying that Stahl can't be good, but he doesn't have a ton of experience right now.
Well, I don't think that's it, at least for right now. I reported on Wednesday that the Sabres have had multiple conversations, interviews, however you want to frame it, with experienced NHL executives. And they've kicked around internally a number of different hierarchies, ideas, how to tackle this. And I think what the end result has been is that Kevin Adams is going to retain the general manager title when it's all said and done.
Would they have a president of hockey operations above him?
They talked about that. They talked about adding someone above him that he reports to. They also talked about adding someone underneath of him that works alongside him. It sounds like associate GM Jason Karmanos is going to be moving on. They've had some other interesting developments. Seth Appert, their assistant coach, has been involved in hockey ops and scouting decisions, I'm told, and has certainly Kevin Adams' ear. And the fact that they talked to or interviewed people for a potential president opening and then didn't, at least to this point, fill it, it gives you an indication that that might not happen. They also talked to other people about not a president role, but will you come in and be just a senior advisor? It's different than special assistant to the general manager, but it's the point is Kevin Adams is like, the thing that I come back to is, so Kevin Adams has been there for 5 years, right? It's kind of like, I view the general manager position kind of like being a rookie in the NHL. When you get to the playoffs, there are no more rookies. You've now played 82 games. You've been baptized. Certainly by year 3, you would think that, the amount of things that you've learned and the way the business works, that you'd have a way better handle on it through 5 complete seasons. And you've now regressed 91, 85 or 84 points, 79.
75, yeah.
I mean, come on. So if you're going through all these different hoops to jump through to say, well, maybe we need more support, like the time to add support was 5 years ago, not now. So haven't you then already on an internal admission basis, haven't you admitted, hey, this guy's not getting the job done?
Yeah. Well, that's my question is, I'm not sure, like, what's the plan here in Buffalo? I don't know. Sometimes I wonder from ownership if he has a real decisive plan.
He's yet to verbalize what that looks like or sounds like. He didn't do it at the end of season press conference, in which he also made the declaration that Lindy Ruff is going to be back, who, by the way, will be paid in full for the first time by the Sabres in the second stint. The Devils covered the vast majority of his pay last year.
Yeah.
I just don't understand what's happening there. If you go through all these steps, I mean, I'm not saying don't shine a light on it. I'm just saying, if you've shined the light and you've gone through this multi-week process, haven't you already said, it's like the team that says, well, if we lose tonight, I'm firing the coach. Like, haven't you already said then to yourself,
yes,
this guy is not the right guy?
100%. I've never that always felt, oh, we're waiting until the loss. No, you just get rid of them. Now, before we end, the one team that we know Rick Tocchet won't be going to 100%, of course, is the Vancouver Canucks, because that's where he left. Frank, anything as we part on the Canucks search? I've heard Jay Woodcroft's name in there. Anybody?
Yeah, I think Jay Woodcroft would make a lot of sense, having been in a Canadian market, having had a strong winning percentage. I think he would vibe with Patrick Allvin and that group. I think Manny Malhotra remains a real strong candidate from within. They understand his process and the way that he works. And don't sleep on the idea of Adam Foote being promoted from assistant coach to head coach. I think that's a real possibility as well. And I think Foote is going to have somewhere between 3 to 5 interviews for these openings. I think Woodcroft is probably in line for 5 different opportunities as well. It's kind of this game of musical chairs that's spinning, and everyone wants to make sure they have a seat when it stops. It hasn't really begun spinning quite yet with any speed, but don't forget about some other guys that are out there. I think without a doubt, Dave Haxtell is getting a job in this turn.
Okay.
I just think there's
Peter Laviolette.
I'm curious about the tenured, experienced Stanley Cup winners. Peter Laviolette, John Tortorella. Where do those guys fit? How hungry are they to still keep going? What's happening?
Yeah. Well, and there's always going to be a few, there's going to be, I would assume somewhere there's going to be a first-time NHL head coach involved in that. And we know that it's not going to be coming from Colorado, though. Right? As Carl signed the extension.
Yeah, he's to stay in Denver. And look, I think there's some quality candidates. Someone has to give Todd Nelson a shot.
Oh,
I really believe that.
Long overdue, man. That all the guy does is win in different organizations. It's ridiculous why and I've heard, he does an interview. I don't care. Honestly,
who cares if he interviews well? It doesn't I view Todd Nelson as, first off, it seemed like everyone really liked playing for him in Edmonton.
Dude, players love that guy.
He's a very normal, likes to hunt and fish, and he's not going to knock you over with some fancy plan on a PowerPoint or spreadsheet. And I don't really give a shit about that. I want to know, can he coach? Does my team win? And do my players develop? And he's won 3 Calder Cup championships. How many 3-time AHL champions continue to get passed over for an NHL job?
Yeah, no, he would be at the top of my list. If he doesn't, I just don't understand it sometimes. And maybe you want to, because when I hear this, he doesn't interview well. What does that even mean? Right. So he's not all, flash and dash, and maybe he doesn't have the crispest shoot. Who cares? Right. What are we talking about when it comes to, look at results? This is why my teams win. And when you say 3 AHL titles, Frank's been with different organizations too. So it's not like he's just stayed in one place and they've always had a veteran team and they win. He knows how to get the most out of his players. I've talked to guys who played for him. They love him. He's a no BS type of coach.
Yeah.
From every player I've talked to, they're just he's no BS. You know where he stands. He's pretty upbeat. He can be a taskmaster if needed, but he also can be very relaxed and joking around his players.
You said might not always have the most crisp suit. That was one of the stories, was that apparently one time he showed up for an interview and it looked like he just, rolled his suitcase, took his suit out and just showed up with wrinkles everywhere. Who cares? I don't care if provided you're not showing up in a Speedo. Again, that's not the qualification. Is are you well dressed and well tailored?
I remember Todd joking when it came to him. He's like, God, I probably got to get a new suit, because it's just not something he cares about, right? He's not worried about, do I have the best looking suit while I'm on the bench? It has zero impact to how I coach.
And I think there's a ton of guys, and I'm not going to name names, that interview well, that repeatedly get jobs, that can't coach worth a lick.
Yep. Totally true. Frankie, enjoy the weekend, my man. And we will be back with another edition of the Rundown, brought to you by Bet365 on Monday.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.